Hello and welcome everyone. This is your astrology forecast for new moon in Gemini that is happening on the 14th of June, and we are in the middle of Gemini season. I mean, not in the middle. 14th of June is like some 6-7 days before the Gemini season ends, but whenever we have these mutable energies activated, this is a moment before the season changes. So this is a moment before the spring turns into summer in the northern hemisphere, but it doesn't matter where we are in the world, because we are going to experience this shift of energies, this change of season. And because we are moving now from air into water, we have to really bring together our thoughts and feelings. Gemini thoughts, Cancer feelings. And especially because the ruler of this new moon is Mercury, and Mercury is where? In Cancer, in the sign where the sun will move into next, and the moon also. After this lunation, the moon moves on and goes on and moves into Cancer. So this is the transition from our mind into the heart. But we have to bring them together, because Gemini is the sign of duality, and this is the moment of initiation where we are asked to move between those dualities, to find the gap and not to choose the sides. We don't have to choose sides, because if we choose sides, there is no balance there, and the third force cannot be born. But when we know that these two pillars are actually creating the gate, then we learn how to walk through that gate. And when we hear Gemini, we immediately think about communication, words, thoughts, writing, reading, learning, teaching, data, education, knowledge, all these things that are Geminian things, and they are true, but there is deeper layer behind every sign, of course, and there is deeper layer of this knowledge and of this ability to express our feelings, to verbalize them, to put them into words. And it's very important what we speak and how we speak and why we decide to talk about certain things, and how we listen to each other, how we listen, and what stories we tell to each other, what stories we hear and what stories we take as true, which stories stay with us, which information stay with us. And this is like, if Aries is that moment where consciousness realizes that I exist, and Taurus is that moment where we embody that energy and we turn it into matter, then the Gemini is very different from both. And it's the moment where we realize that there is the other, that something exists outside of myself. There is the other person. This is relationship, this is exchange of information, and this is the moment where consciousness realizes this, that there is something other than me. And this is why Gemini is represented by twins, because Gemini rules duality itself. This is the discovery that the reality is made of relationships, and self and the other, question and the answer, speaker and the listener, student and the teacher, known and the unknown, inner and outer. And these are the Hermetic principles that say, as above, so below, as within, so without. And this is the ability to understand that there is another point of view, just like I spoke about in the previous video where we talked about full moon in Sagittarius. And we are now able to see that we are actually carrying within us many different personalities, not only one that is fixed. I always talk about these things when I talk about Gemini, when there is strong Gemini activation. And this is really something that when we observe, we realize how true it is. Even though it can be scary for some people, but it's completely normal and natural to understand that we are one person in the morning with completely different set of desires, problems, fears than we are after we have a breakfast, or when we have a coffee, or when we meet someone, or during the day, whatever we do, we change. We can witness many different personalities and sides of ourselves. Like, we are completely different before we go to sleep. We are completely different when we are hungry. We are completely different when we finish our work. You know, all these are different personalities, because this is something that allows us a bit of emotional relief and release, not having to stick to one and the same behavior, because that's not normal really, because we just try so hard to show that we are one and the same always, but we are not. We change, we shift, we change our moods, we change our opinions, and we may change opinions many times during the time and around the time of this new moon, because Gemini is a social butterfly and mentally restless and changing opinions, because moon shifts between these different states. Moon rules, mood shifts and swings. So now we may have a very frequent shifts of our state of being, of our opinion, of our decisions. Like, I may want one thing at one moment, and then at the same time I may want 3 different things. And like, I want to be in 10 different places at the same time, or I scheduled 10 different things at the same time, and I want them with the same passion at the same time. And I'm a Gemini, so I can recognize this, and I can confirm that this is something that is real and it's happening. And this Mercury in Cancer can actually give us the way out of this restlessness. But that very moment where we struggle and wrestle and feel the pressure of wanting 2 opposing things at the same time with the same passion, this very moment of that pressure is what creates what creates a gap between these 2 pillars to walk through them. It's right exactly through that pressure where we recognize it, that we want these 2 opposing things at the same time. This is where we can experience this moment of emotional release. And you know, these ancient mystery schools always paid close attention to the symbolism of twins and of duality, and we find twins in every story through mythology and fairy tales and esoteric symbolism and alchemical teachings. There are twins everywhere. There are, you know, Castor and Pollux, the story, the mythology of Gemini. Then we have Romulus and Remus. Then we have Adam and Eve. Then we have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, Ashwinis in Vedic traditions, Cain and Abel in Christian terminology, and all these other polarities that now I cannot all remember, but there are many. And we are going to have access to our own polarity within us, our own split, and maybe even mental split, inner split. And much of this work revolves around 2 opposing forces that must eventually learn to coexist. And the twins appear because they represent one of the oldest mysteries of the human beings that, you know, we can encounter. You know, how do 2 seemingly opposite things belong to the same whole? Like, we see this through astrology, through the zodiac. When we have these opposite signs, they are one and the same thing, but in different degrees, different quality of it, like 2 ends of the same stick. And you know, it's this new moon is not making any aspect with other planets, of course with the sun, because this is what new moon is. It's the meeting and conjunction with the sun. But there is no influence of other planets directly on this new moon. So this is like where Gemini archetype is much strongly experienced. This is like pure Gemini, and pure Gemini is about perception, not so much about information, but about perception. And in mythology, Mercury, Hermes, was one of the only beings capable of moving freely moving between Olympus, Earth, and the underworld, the messenger between worlds. And Mercury has the power to connect realities that normally are separate. So during this time, we may connect with something or someone that we usually don't have capacity to connect with. And this is where we have ability to understand our thoughts and words and ideas and actions, and our need to express ourselves verbally, to express our feelings, especially because Mercury is in Cancer, in the water sign that is ruled by the moon, and we have new moon in Gemini and Mercury in Cancer. So they are both ruling planets in these different signs. Like the moon is in the sign of this lunation, and Mercury, which is the ruler of lunation, is in the sign that moon rules. So we may really have some strong moments where we can shape our opinion differently, in a new way, where our past emotional experiences or experiences from the childhood, because we have Cancer here in the story, we can have new and different perspective of it completely. And we may have a very emotional conversation about our past, about our family, or with family members, or we may have a very emotional conversation with someone, or a conversation that allows us big emotional release, that allows us release that gives us freedom to express ourselves freely, to express our feelings freely, without being afraid of being misunderstood. And we may suddenly become curious about something. We may realize that we have lost curiosity somewhere along the way, and we are now coming back together with that childlike curiosity that really gets us together with that explorative spirit that asks questions. So we may be asking a lot of questions, or we may be asked a lot of questions, or we may learn something that also gives us that kind of emotional relief, or ability to talk about how we feel, and to translate our emotions, to translate them in a way that where we feel understood and heard. And this new moon is also inviting us to listen to others, to make others feel heard, because when we make others feel heard, the dynamic between us changes, and relationships are very important during this time. They are always important, but Gemini also rules relationships, the other, the awareness of the other, but not in a way as Libra is the awareness of the other, which is another air sign. But this is where we need the other person as a witness, the other. And we can expect great conversations. New people may be coming into our life who change our opinion about something in a significant way. And this can be one phone call, or one sentence, or one message, or just one piece of information, or maybe even one word, or a hand shaking, or one gesture, because Gemini rules the hands and our mimics and gestures and even facial expressions. So all these things are communication, and how we communicate. Gemini is about our ability to communicate things. And Gemini also rules so-called coincidences, but this new moon is here to also give us deeper insight into coincidences and what they actually are. They are more actually synchronicities. So we can now see that many coincidences are actually synchronicities, and there are no coincidences. Everything is, perfectly designed and aligned with where we are at this very moment, with our emotional, mental, and physical web and design. So this is that strange phenomena where inner and outer reality suddenly seem connected through in unusual ways, and through seemingly unconnected realities. And we may have a strong need to speak about our feelings, to express them in a way that so we can be understood. We try to explain how we feel with words, and we have a need to explain our feelings to another person. And so these conversations can become very intimate and very healing. And many conversations during this time may revolve around our memories, our childhood, our family history, our private life. And we may also have that experience where for example, we share the story, and perhaps the person who was in the same story with us, had the same experience, have completely different memories. And this is where we can see how, if we witness the same thing, we may not have the same story to tell. So we may be sharing completely different stories with different people. If 3 of us participated in that story, we may have 3 different stories, and it's completely normal. This doesn't mean that one person is lying, but it's their truth. I mean, it's their perspective, and it doesn't mean it's less valid than yours. So again, this continues. The previous lunation was also about different perspectives, and this one is also very, very strongly related to that, and to ability to comprehend multiple realities that exist. And we may find ourselves remembering things we haven't thought about for years, or we may see how the past still impacts our words and our thoughts and our conversations. And there is this wide square between Mercury, the ruler of this lunation, and Saturn in Aries. And this adds another layer, the layer of seriousness to all of this. And there is some kind of challenge or crisis in conversations, or we may feel unable to speak about everything. We may feel censored in some way. We may feel like there is some strong, strict authority telling us, don't talk about that or this. And there is this struggle, there is this need to break free from that kind of limitation and that kind of authority. So we may have issues with authority figures, or with older people in our life, or with people just who have authority role in our life. And we may become aware of where we hesitate to speak, or where we constantly correct ourselves when we speak, or we may see how fear impacts our decisions, or we may be forced in some way to do a reality check with what we think and how we express our thoughts and feelings with others, because we may see that we may be trying to dominate others through our words, or we may feel manipulated by others through our conversations. And we can see where we try so hard to avoid difficult conversations, and where all the authority figures still live inside of our mind. So this is something that is very, very important now, because we may all in one way or another have this kind of confrontation. And this is, Gemini wants dialogue. And dialogue can reveal our power dynamics very quickly during this time, because we also have Venus opposite Pluto. Venus in Leo, 1st degree of Leo, opposite Pluto at 5th degree of Aquarius. It's not exact opposition, but it's felt. It's right there. And this can bring moments where we realize that we are seeking validation, when we are actually having a need for true connection. Like, we may see that beneath this need for validation and for the proof of our worthiness, there is actually the need for true connection, for that real dialogue, for really being heard and understood. And we may not find it now, or we may discover it but in a challenging way. And we may see where we show confidence when we actually need, when what we actually need is to be accepted. But we may present our confidence in a very authoritative or manipulative way, because we defend ourselves in some way, or we may just want to protect ourselves. So it's very important to be very aware of why we use certain words and sayings and stories, why we bring up something, why we bring up certain theme, why now, why we bring up certain theme from the past now. Are we doing it because we want to prove something to someone, or to punish someone, or to manipulate, or to prove that we were right all along? It's very important to see where we're coming from when it comes to bringing up some themes from the past. And one, these two pillars that I mentioned, this is actually coming from much older mystery traditions, and two pillars are standing at the entrance of the temple. These are called Yakin and Boaz. You can do your research about these two pillars. This is, mercy and severity. It's expansion and contraction. It's masculine and feminine. It's active and receptive energy. This is where the infinite stands between them, and we are not choosing one. As I said, we are learning to navigate with both, and this is Gemini, standing between realities, learning the language of opposites, and discovering that truth appears between extremes. And we sometimes have to touch those extremes. We sometimes we actually learn balance through extremes, and nothing bad with it. Really, just let's see it all as an experience. And we are invited to be curious about what life might still be trying to teach us now. And most of reality now reveals itself through our relationships. And old astrologers, ancient astrologers, I don't know, the origin of astrology, when talking about planets, it's not really about some planets out there. This is, the story of us human beings. Just like mythology, we carry all these stories within us. And sometimes we are Persephone, sometimes we are Hades, sometimes we are Demeter. And of course this is just the Greek mythology, but take any mythology and you are going to discover archetypes and our own behaviors there, our own different stories and dramas that we experience. And the same is true with astrology and the archetypes of the zodiac, and they are all connected, they are all intertwined and within each other, and archetype within archetype. So we are unlocking many different archetypes through our lives, and we come back to some. So we have to go through the same role again and again, perhaps, and some roles we go through once and we never come back to them ever again. But because we learned something from that role and we played it very well and we finished with that role and we don't need it anymore. So we may now see which roles we still have to play, which roles come back to us, and which new roles we are taking. And the sky is really a language through which we speak, through which universe speaks to us and revealing to us our own conditionings, our own path, our own blockages, our own karma, our own contracts that we make. And Gemini is one of the most human signs in the entire zodiac. So when we think of Gemini, we imagine, someone talkative, curious, witty, intelligent. But Gemini is actually describing a problem of duality. And there are always at least two voices inside us, inside each of us. And one part of us wants safety, another part wants freedom. And we face this continuously through our everyday life in many different ways, where we want two opposing things at the same time. Like one part wants honesty and another part wants acceptance. One part wants adventure, the other part wants something safe, something emotionally comforting, something where we can just fully relax. Or one part says yes and another part says, wait, I'm not sure. We all experience this, and that is why the symbol of the twins is so powerful. It's not about one twin is good and the other is bad. Neither it is about, one is right and the other is wrong. They belong to each other, and the old mystery traditions, they, loved symbols that appeared in pairs, like 2 pillars, 2 hands, 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 lungs, 2 hemispheres of the brain, day and night, inhale and exhale, birth and death. So we spend much of our lives unconsciously trying to choose one side against the other. And it's impossible, because life keeps teaching us the same thing, actually, that we need both. We need both. We cannot live just in daylight. Of course, there are places where there is day more than night, but you got the point. Like, whole day is the moment of 12 hours of day and 12 hours of night, mostly. Or it's, every day the sun rises, but the sun also sets. So we have to experience the wholeness. Or like, we have to inhale, but we also have to exhale if we want to live and to breathe. So, of course, duality is necessary. And the inhale means nothing without the exhale. The left foot means nothing without the right, symbolically, metaphorically. I'm not literally talking about it. So even the heart expands and contracts. So everything that is alive moves through polarity in one way or another. And Gemini is the sign that rules this. Noticing contradictions, but being contradictive itself. Noticing contradictions and being contradictive. Noticing complexity and being complex. Noticing that reality is not so simple as we may be wanted to be. But actually it is simple. It is actually simple, but it comes through complexity. And there are great stories that can help us understand this, like the Mullah Nasruddin and the smuggler. These are great stories about Mullah. For years, custom officers suspected that Nasruddin is the thief and he is smuggling something. So every day he crossed the border on a donkey carrying bags of straw, and they searched for something constantly. And years later, after Nasruddin retired, one of the officers finally asked, tell me honestly, what were you smuggling? And he said, donkeys. So this story is very beautifully describing this energy of Gemini now, because attention is often focused on complexity and it misses what is obvious. So we may miss something that is very obvious now. People search for hidden meaning and overlook what stands directly in front of us. So this is something that may really be strong now, that we can face and experience, and it changes our perspective. And it's time when we understand that one thought affects another, one conversation changes a life, one sentence can alter our perception, and everything is linked. And there is also another great story of the rabbi and the 2 men. And 2 men came to a rabbi to settle an argument. The first man explained his side and the rabbi listened, then said, "You are right." The second man explained his story. The rabbi said, "You are right." And there was a student watching and he became confused and said, "Rabbi, they can't both be right." The rabbi thought for a moment and then said, "You are right too." So this is kind of energy that is very, very strong now, and that we may be able to comprehend. And there is great quote from Henry Bergson, I think. Yes, Bergson. And he said, "The eye sees only what the mind is prepared to comprehend." And with this I would end this forecast, because my battery is going off. I would have so many more things to say, but I think this is also meant to happen if it's happening now. I have to believe that with this quote I end this video, and I wish us all a powerful shift of perspective and ability to walk through those 2 pillars and enter the center. Love you all and see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.